empty the chamber on them. And how do you do that? 4 to 6 seconds, point A to point B, everything you got. Everything you got. Turn that shit up. Let's go. Welcome to the Scoop World Order. The boys are back in town edition. The Buckeyes practiced today. They were in shells, so they had their hard upper pads on, and they had just shorts on, or their little short football shorts on. But with the uppers on, you can start having contact. Offense and D lines banging each other a little bit, do some teamwork, in contact, and they're working their way towards having full pads, which is going to be soon, and it's going to be awesome, and we're excited about it around here. And it's good to see he's going to make some moves this spring, because this is the time where you go claim your spot for the season. You go get that starting job. You establish yourself, and it's a big spring for a lot of these kids. So we're going to get right into that because we're excited about it. But first, appreciate all you guys. Your support's been unbelievable. We have been growing like a weed. So if you could leave a like on this video, it really helps us with the YouTube algorithm. And also leave some comments. I love reading your comments. I love responding to your comments. Appreciate all your comments, because it helps us with the site. So subscribe, like, comment, and for me, comment who you want to see step up this spring on the Ohio State team on offense or defense. There's about 20 names that are really out there that people want to see. Who's going to be the next big thing? Who's going to be the next superstar? Who needs to improve their game? So leave me some comments. I love reading those. I love kind of seeing where you guys' heads at with certain players, and it'll be a blast. So with that, it's time to bring in my boy Nevadabuck. Nevada, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good. Exciting day. Learning a little bit more every day. It's like a little bit more is revealed about the Ohio State Buckeyes 2022, and I think we're catching glimpses, and it's exciting.
Yeah, and it's fun to get some updates, because generally the media that goes and covers practice, they're literally kicked out right after stretching. So it's not there's not really a ton of that you can glean from being at practice and watching it. So it's more fun to just check in with some people that were actually there for the entire time and see what went on, because I used to be a player, I used to be a coach. I used to see how they would design practice. So, okay, the media's here for the first 15 minutes of practice, and then they get the boot. And so that's literally stretch period, and like the first period, which is like punt. So you don't really they don't get to see much. And honestly, it's even tighter now, because NFL scouts get booted out of practice like in the middle point of practice, which never used to happen. So it's pretty locked down. So it's once you get some of these juicy nuggets, it really makes life fun. So I'm gonna get right into our show. We're gonna get into some practice nuggets. So Nevada, got my baby boy Dewan right there, and I think Dewan's working off some of that spring break, because he's got a sweatshirt on underneath his pads, which usually, if you're wearing a sweatshirt at practice, that means you got some pounds to shave off. But he looks great. He looks fit. They got the knee braces on, which means there's some contact today. But what'd you get out of today's practice? What'd you hear? I know you checked with a bunch of people we talked in the pre-show. Who's making a move so far through the first 3 days of practice as we go into this weekend's scrimmage?
Well, for me, I always like to see who you hear from a number of different people, because everybody sees something different at practice, and I try to cross-reference as many things so that you're kind of getting the goods. And the two names that I got from just about everybody I checked in with, there's one's an offensive lineman in terms of Luke Whippler. Luke just looks tremendous, has been testing out off the chart, and his knowledge of football is unbelievable. He came in last year kind of out of nowhere, kind of took that center position. There was some question about whether it was going to be a competition, and he's made it not a competition. And I actually had one of my better sources say to me today that he thinks Luke could go down as one of the best all-time centers ever to play the position at Ohio State. And we've had some really good centers and a really long line of good centers at Ohio State, and he thinks Luke's as good as any of them. And that was really something that I really paid attention to. And the other guy was an offensive guy, is Julian Fleming. Julian Fleming's a guy that we've been waiting on him to kind of arrive. We've been waiting on him to kind of do his thing. He's always looked a little stiff to me. I know he's been battling some nagging injuries throughout his time here at Ohio State, and I think he's starting to finally put it all together. And Julian Fleming's a guy that I would certainly keep an eye out for as well, because I think it's going to be a fierce wide receiver battle. But I think Julian's going to be right in the middle, in the midst of all of it, and he's a guy that I can't wait to see in these scrimmages and the spring game.
Yeah, and again, I was really excited yesterday talking about one of my sleeper pick, Jaden Ballard, because him and Julian at the Z is going to be a ferocious battle for that outside wide receiver spot. I'm really excited to see who wins it, because I feel like, if anything's going to push Julian to a new level, it's a kid like Jaden Ballard who's freaky athletic, freaky fast. He's put in a lot of work in the gym. Like whoever comes out as the winner of that race is going to be an exceptional receiver, and I'm just excited to see who joins Jackson Smith and Majiga and Marv and Emeka in that first 3-4 deep at receiver. For me, I mean, Ronnie Hickman, we've heard ad nauseum with Jim Knowles that this is a safety driven defense. Ronnie has been fantastic. He's a guy that's a leader. He's explosive. He's a playmaker. And I think, when he's converting into a safety driven defense, he could really have a monster impact this year. And another guy that that I love and I've been hearing about, and I hope that he plays up to being the beast that I know that he is, Jack Sawyer. Jack, obviously very heralded, 5-star kid out of Pickerington, sat out his football season last year, and last year, the COVID year 2020. There was rumors there was going to be spring football, so he didn't play and he just trained, and then he was going to show up in January and play in the spring season. That it's amazing that we could even say that out loud without a laugh. But he's gained some bulk. He looks noticeably thicker, because I think that he was a little too light last year, got bounced around a little bit versus the better right tackles that he went against. And I think now that he's a little bit more stout, I mean, he's always been extremely nasty, mean, ferocious. He's a great athlete, and I think he's going to really take the next level jump that we need from our DNs. Because if there's a weakness on our team, our pass rush last year was embarrassing. Against teams that weren't Akron, and we had to go against good teams who couldn't get any pressure on the quarterback, and that was something that we've really got to get tuned up. And I think Jim Knowles' defense is going to, not only are these guys going to be coached differently, but the simulated pressures, the blitz packages. I literally cannot wait to see some of the stuff he's going to unleash. But the sad part is we probably won't see it till Notre Dame, just because of, you're not going to see much in the spring game, and maybe a couple scrimmages that we'll get some reports on, I'm sure. But I'm excited to see what Jim Knowles has to do to get some more pressure from our guys up front. So we are going to shift gears into Pro Day. So tomorrow is Pro Day at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. And for those of you that don't know, Pro Day is when the players, the rising, outgoing seniors and juniors work out for NFL scouts, GMs, the like. And an interesting factoid for tomorrow is that CJ Stroud is actually going to throw, because they needed a quarterback. So they're bringing Cardell Jones out of retirement, and I'm sure Cardell's working out for the scouts to see if he get, one last, futures contract in the NFL. And then you've got CJ, who is he's a rising junior. I mean, everyone in the world expects him to leave after this year, but he's going to throw in front of the scouts. Nevada, what was your initial reaction when you heard that CJ was going to have essentially a pro day a year before what will be his official pro day? Good, bad, indifferent? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's good. I think, whenever you have kids that go through stuff like that, I mean, the biggest thing is just familiarity with the drills and familiarity with what you're going through and what they're going to be asking of you to do it. And I think you see this across sports, whether it be hockey or basketball or anything. The skills that they ask you to kind of put on in these combine settings are very specific. And if you're not familiar with the drills, or you haven't gone through them, or you haven't experienced them, it's hard, and you certainly don't perform anywhere near your maximum when you're not as familiar with the drills. I mean, heck, think about it as taking the SAT or the ACT and not having taken a practice test. So I think CJ having a pro day kind of experience without having to have the real lights of the pro day on him, I think it's only beneficial for him, and I think it's a really shrewd thing for Ryan Day to do, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's a huge benefit for Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson because of the familiarity. I would imagine, since there isn't a quarterback who's essentially auditioning, that Ryan Day and Corey Dennis will likely script the workout. So they'll probably use a lot of the same verbiage. Hey, run 52 Y China or whatever, and that'll be something that'll really benefit the receivers. And I don't know what Jeremy Rucker's going to do because it sounds like he's dinged up. But those guys that are auditioning, Master Teague, I'm sure will be running some flat routes and whatever. It'll be helpful because they've got the familiarity. Obviously CJ had a fantastic year throwing to Garrett and Chris Olave, and it's just always helpful when you have a quarterback that you have a lot of familiarity with. So I thought that was intriguing. I mean, it's something that they didn't really allow that back when I played, and they've kind of changed the rules. Like back when I was going through pro day and I was an active player, the juniors could actually run a 40 for the scouts. So like the one year, like AJ Hawk, Bobby Carpenter, and Nick Mangold all ran 40s before the actual pro day started. And they ran well, and it was like good just to have a time down on paper. And then it was funny. The next year, I was debating on running. I didn't really feel like running. I didn't really want to run. And I was literally saying, "Screw it, I'll run." And then all of a sudden, the day before they show up for pro day, they say, juniors can no longer run at pro day. So I was like, oh, well, that makes that decision for me. So yeah, but I'm excited to see what some of these guys do. See who improves on their times on their bench press. I mean, I'm sure that we won't get 40s out of Garrett and Olave, but they'll have to do their agilities or their 5-10-5, their L drill, and their long shuttle, which is that's a 5-10-15 back shuttle. So it'll be interesting to see what times come out of those. But after they popped off those 40s and they ran some straight routes, like they're pretty much money in the bank at this point. So with that, we're going to transition to our buddy Baker Mayfield. Nevada, does anybody want Baker Mayfield? Can we get anything for Baker Mayfield? What's the latest on Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, the latest on Baker Mayfield is the Browns are being asked to pick up a huge chunk of the salary in order to move him, and that's obviously less than optimal for the Browns. Certainly, a situation where the rosy optimistic things were, oh, we'll get a first for Baker, oh, we'll get a second, oh, we'll get DK Metcalf, oh, we'll get whatever. And right now it's like we're trying to get rid of him. That $18 million is really kind of a lodestone around his neck, and nobody wants him. So I would expect that the Browns will pick up 12 or 15 million of that and go. Now maybe I'm wrong. I mean, this has been such a crazy offseason that I don't rule out anything. But I've been on the Baker thing for a long time. I have
Yeah.
a couple really good Baker sources,
Oh, yeah.
and I think right now the Browns are in a situation where they're kind of up against it, and more and more teams are picking up their quarterback, and there's just not a lot of places left for him to go, and so I would not be surprised at all as a Browns fan to expect us to be eating a bunch of salary just to unload the contract.
Well, I think it's fascinating that a team like the Colts would prefer Matt Ryan, who was in my draft class in 2008 and is 38 years old, to Baker Mayfield, who actually costs less and is substantially younger. But obviously, he's basically on a 1 year trial. Then you have to figure out if you want to re-up him or cut him loose. But I mean, trading for a 38-year-old quarterback, and then the Atlanta Falcons prefer Marcus Mariota, who he had some decent times at Tennessee. He did some things with the Raiders, but I mean, they literally said we're going to bring in Marcus Mariota this year, and he's going to be our quarterback. So I mean, you can basically get Baker Mayfield for essentially free at this point in terms of compensation, and people still don't want him, which is it's almost amazing given how much money they gave Deshaun Watson, what they gave up for Deshaun Watson, that they can't get anything for Baker. But if gun to your head, this is going to be a tough prediction. Who do you think Baker Mayfield plays for next season?
I mean, it's got to be Seattle. I mean, it's got to be
No.
Seattle. I mean, I think that's the one that makes the most sense. But it's not inconceivable he could go to something that we're not even thinking about. As the backup. I mean, not as the primary quarterback, but as the backup on like a $3 million deal because the Browns are eating 15 million or something like that. That certainly opens up the possibilities. So I'd have to really study who's got the backup quarterback positions, who's got a strong head coach, who can afford to have a personality like Baker in the room, because that's a big thing about it. Because he doesn't want to be the backup quarterback, and
No.
so how good of a teammate is he going to be as a backup quarterback? I mean, he's got the ability. I mean, he's not. I mean, Baker's not horrible. He's got a huge arm, and he's had some good moments. but does he want to be the backup quarterback behind Patrick Mahomes or something like that? I don't know if he's got the temperament for it, and I think that's the huge challenge for any of the NFL teams looking at him.
Yeah, and it's amazing a team like the Texans, who they literally have zero depth at quarterback, and they don't want him. They have salary cap money out the wazoo. I played for Lovie Smith. I know Lovie Smith. He's not a Lovie Smith kind of guy at quarterback. Lovie wants a real professional quarterback, but there's some teams that there's just an absolute dearth of talent at the quarterback position, and it's amazing that they still don't want Baker, even if it's essentially for free, which is it's just crazy how far he's fallen. I'm glad the Browns are moving on from him. I think it's going to be very beneficial this year. So, moving on to
now, before we do that,
oh,
before we
yeah,
move on, I'm gonna put something back at you there, Kirk. This is kind of
yeah,
NFL buzz / pro day / Buckeyes. I
yeah.
want you to go on the record projecting where do Chris Olave and
Okay.
Garrett Wilson fall in the NFL draft?
Now,
Where are they
is
selected?
is this pick number or is this the actual team they go to? Because it's
Pick
with
number.
trades and
I'm
whatever.
looking for pick.
Okay,
I'm looking for pick number.
I think Garrett Wilson goes 5 to 10, and I think Olave
Okay.
goes 20 to 25.
Okay. And
So
what do you think and why do you think there's such a disparity? What to you makes Garrett Wilson a 5 to 10 and Olave at 20 to 25?
I think he has more upside. He's a year younger as a junior. I think it's weird. It's weird to say that he's more explosive when Olave ran faster, but I think he plays bigger. I think he has more juice. I think he's the guy that, last year when you watched the offense, even when we'd be kind of sleepwalking, he would be the guy that was like the energizer guy, the juice guy, like the Tyreek Hill. And, I've seen him practice. I've watched him practice. I've seen him at games. And he just has a certain vibe and energy around him that I think teams are really going to gravitate towards. Like, you get that guy, and he's a franchise type wide receiver. He's a great kid, and Olave's a great kid as well. But if you put a gun to my head, I'm always taking a guy who's a year younger, and plus he's a 5-star guy. He played like a 5-star guy. He's used to the pressure, and I just think he's an explosive jumper. He plays like he's 6'4", even though he's not. He's a guy that can high point the ball. I prefer him to almost any receiver I've seen at Ohio State. So it's not really fair, but I think Olave is a special kid. Again, he's one of the rarest birds in the world. A kid that could have been a first rounder as a junior. He actually came back for his senior year, and then he opts out of the game, but then he's still practicing with his teammates, hanging out with his teammates. It was almost like he didn't want to not play in the game, so he's like going through the practice and everything. So, what about you? Where do you think those guys are going to end up?
I think that's about right. I think I've always thought that Garrett was a guy that looked more like an NFL wide receiver than Olave does.
Yeah.
As a Packers fan, I'm hoping that Olave falls into that 20 to 25 range because Packers have a couple of picks in that range. And like I said, I've said this before, but I'd love nothing more than Olave to be teamed up with Aaron Rodgers and be playing in Green Bay, and that would be a dream for me to watch him because Chris is one of my all-time favorite players, has been for many, many years. And, he was a household name with me before anybody ever heard of him here at Ohio State. And I just love that kid and would love to see him be a Packer.
No, I can't even imagine what would happen if the Packers took him. It would be unbelievable because the house of Nevadabuck would probably shake to the ground if that happened. Because you'd be just in tears and happy because they wouldn't take a defensive tackle or a nose guard or another quarterback. They'd actually take the guy that makes perfect sense for Aaron Rodgers. Then the next thing you do is you take him in the first round of your fantasy draft, I'm sure.
Well, no, but it's the yin to the yang. I mean, it's the exact opposite reaction the Nevadabuck household had to the Jordan Love selection when they picked
Oh
that
my
one,
God.
because that was like, stuff was getting torn up and it was like rioting in the streets of the Nevadabuck
Oh my
household. We were
God.
burning couches and throwing tires and doing everything else like that. So I think I'm owed one. I'm owed a good. I had one before. I had AJ Hawk to the Packers
There you
back
go.
when it was a very happy moment around Nevadabuck household. So I'm due
Yeah.
another one.
You did get Josh Myers though, so they might
That's
have missed
true.
on Jordan
That's
Love. At
true.
least you got your boy Josh Myers, and you had Corey Linsley, and Corey's a Pro Bowl center now. So It's good, man. So we're gonna tune up and hit the Masters real quick. Big news: Phil Mickelson is sitting out for the first time in a long time, and Tiger Woods might never golf again because of his horrific car accident. So Nevada, a little bit on your take on the Masters this year. You know, maybe some favorite memories of the Masters. What do you think about the Masters this year? Does it lose cachet with obviously not having these two A-plus superstars playing for the first time in a long time?
Well, I mean, the Masters is always going to be the Masters, and you've
Yeah,
always got so many. I mean, you look at the field; it's going to be so many great champions and so many great young guys and old guys, and I mean, Ohio State connections, and all sorts of interesting subplots. But the Mickelson one was really, for people that haven't followed that as closely, I mean, basically, Mickelson was planning kind of a palace coup and a alternate golf league with backed by the Saudi royal family, and was basically trying to poach players, trying to poach Bryson DeChambeau and a number of Dustin Johnson and Jordan Spieth and a number of other players, and kind of got called out on it and really got exposed as kind of the force behind it, and it's a shame to see Phil not at the Masters, because I think America loves, they love reclamation stories. They love, he said he was sorry. He's there, and the fans love him. They love Phil Mickelson, and
yeah.
I think he'll get a little bit of a mixed reaction when he first starts coming back. But Americans have an amazing capacity to forgive and move on, and if you show contrition, and I think I want to see him there. I think I mean, Augusta's Augusta, but it'll be a little bit less for not having Phil out there for sure.
Do you think, when someone like Phil Mickelson plans, a so-called coup with, some serious, I'm sure, billionaire backers behind him for a new league, do you think that when he did the pay-per-view special where he played Tiger Woods at Shadow Creek and he saw how much money he could make, just, as a separate little entity, a little, two guys kind of BSing on the course, and how excited fans got to see that, it was up close, it was real intimate. There weren't many people on the course. The cameras were right on them the whole time, and and they made a fortune doing that. When they played Shadow Creek, do you think that put a little birdie in his ear? He's like, man, we could really do this and kind of change the game and make it, maybe more fun, make it more accessible, make it less stodgy. Do you think that had any to do with his decision to try and do what he did?
Well, I actually have pretty good Phil info, and probably better than most people in terms of Phil, and that has some pretty
Yeah,
good insight to what makes him tick. And Phil's always been about Phil, and
yeah,
Phil's always looking to make a buck. No matter how much money he has, he's the guy that he's always looking to make a little bit more. And I think though, when you break down the stuff that they were asking for in this new league, smaller fields, no cut, 54 holes, it's a lot of stuff that a lot of players want. You know what I'm saying? It's a
yeah.
lot of stuff that a lot of the players would like to have. They just don't have kind of the guts like Phil has to kind of call it out. And I think he went about it indelicately, but I think ultimately a lot of the changes they're talking about are actually going to get implemented in the tour. And so I think, he had to kind of fall on the sword, because he was like I said, he made some stupid comments. He got called out for them. And he's, what they say about pioneers get arrows, like I think he was the guy he had to take the arrows. But I think a lot of the changes will ultimately get made, and it's I think some good will come out of the whole attempted hijacking of the PGA Tour, and but it's fun to watch guys that have so much money just never have enough. He still wants to make more, and Phil has an insatiable appetite for all things Phil. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting that he went about this way. 'Cause I think this isn't a move that you attempt when you're in the beginning or the prime of your career, but when you're kind of fading towards the back nine, use a golf term, and you're like, man, I could. These guys really want me bad, and these guys will pay all this money, and maybe I could, become like a promoter. It's like when like Habib Nurmagomedov, he's not a fighter anymore. Now he's a promoter. Now he owns the league. So it's like, how can you, kind of fade off the golf course, but still make a ton of cash is like, well, own the league or own a stake in the league, or he could go to what's he going to bring to the Royal Family? He's going to bring credibility to that league, but he's also going to poach players. And if you poach players, I get a commission on that, or I get whatever. I'm sure he has some sort of structure, or if he's going to go hog wild and try to do this, I'm sure he's making a lot of scratch if this thing would have gone through the way he was projecting it could. So it's going to be interesting. Any prediction for Masters champion Nevada?
Boy, if I'm going to go with Jordan Spieth. I'm going to say Jordan's going to come out and he's going to have one of those great rounds, and he can putt those lightning fast greens, and I like Spieth to try to pull it off.
I'll just pick Bryson because I think he's crazy. So that's that's my sole rationale. Like I think he's nuts. I think he could be a UFC fighter. He could fight Jorge Masvidal and Kobe Covington in the Miami in Poppy Steak in South Beach. Like they got in a fight last night, and yeah, it's funny. Like Jorge got whacked in the actual fight, and then when he's at a restaurant and Colby's not suspecting it, all of a sudden he knocks his tooth out. So it's amazing how some guys decide to be tough when they don't have to. It's not sanctioned and it's a sneak attack, but it is what it is. It's life. So we're gonna transition now into a kid that we've been meaning to break down, AJ Harris, and I don't know if he's gonna be with us now. I mean, 2 crystal balls came this weekend for the Florida Gators. Bill the Bank Green says he's going to the Gators. He believes the smoke to the Gators. Nevada, AJ Harris, 5-star corner, position of need. Loved Kerry Combs. I remember I actually have video of him getting worked out by Kerry Combs last year at camp. They seemed really close. Kid really revered Kerry Combs, so it's part of life when you give a coach, his walking papers that, you're going to anger some recruits. What are your thoughts on AJ Harris, the transition, the chances of us landing him? What are your initial thoughts as we start our journey into the AJ Harris film session?
Well, I got to see him at the opening and see how he's pretty close to CJ Hicks, and I think CJ was confident for a long time that AJ would end up to be a Buckeye, and I think that confidence is slipping a little bit now. Now, I think you're seeing analysts that are kind of holding on in there, and trying to predict right now, and thinking that they're going to, still end up with Ohio State. But tremendous player, one of the most coveted players in the college football world right now, and I'm optimistic that the Buckeyes. Hey, look, the Buckeyes still have a chance, and a decision is not imminent, and I think he'll be coming up here one more time, and you take your swings and take your shots. So he's a tremendous player. When you watch him, you just see him attack all over the field. He's a leader. He never stopped talking the entire time when he's out there playing against some of the best wide receivers in high school, and he's the kind of guy that you want patrolling back there. But great player. Fingers crossed that he's a Buckeye, even though it's looking a little sketchy right now.
Yeah, and you look at his offer list, and those are the schools you want to be competing against for players. Like when a kid, he lists his 5 schools as Alabama, Clemson, Florida, Georgia, and Ohio State, then you're in the right ballpark in terms of talent and level of player. So we're gonna head into the film room now and just let this run for a little bit. But explosive player, obviously, anytime you can get a 5-star corner, it's exciting because corners generally can play right away. I mean, they're playing man coverage. You're playing, with some guys like Kerry Combs and Gray Shannon, we were very heavy man coverage, and so you got to have guys that can play it. I don't think Jim Knowles is quite as heavy on the man coverage. In fact, I know he isn't, but he's just a fluid guy, and it's rare that a kid who's this good at corner actually ends up playing corner in high school, because generally he's not going to get a lot of action. So you put him at safety just so that, he doesn't just get avoided for the entire game. Because, here, they're throwing it his way and he picks it off every time. So it's going to be interesting to see. If I was a high school coach, I'd play him like Tackett Curtis and put him at free safety and just let him make plays, because, again, you see the explosion, you see the long speed, just freak show. And, I hope something changes. Everybody is, they're obsessed with Corey Raymond and him going to Florida seemed to give Florida a huge edge in this. It looks like they're probably going to get him, but a lot of things change from now until December. Florida could go 4-8, and all of a sudden they're not quite as good. And Ohio State could run the table and be playing for the national title, and he could develop a relationship with Tim Walton, and away we go. So it's I don't know if it's on life support, but it's probably getting there. But yeah, this would be a fantastic add at a position. I mean, you can't have enough corners. So anytime you can get a 5-star corner, it's tasty, in the words of Nevadabuck. But what are you seeing as we watch this film, Nevada?
Well, he's just like you said. He's an explosive player on both sides of the ball. Um, can play safety, can play corner, can play linebacker, can play literally anywhere on the field. He's one of those hybrid types that he could put on weight and really he likes to get in there and stick his nose in there and make a hit. Like I said, would be a great get for Ohio State. And underrated trait of his is he's a leader. I mean, he's a real leader. I talked about his kind of vocal leadership out in the field. He was a guy that Ohio State was hoping would kind of come in and actually lead the recruiting. Every recruiting class has kind of one of those standard bearers that kind of recruits the other kids. And they were really looking to him to be kind of that kid for this class, for his class rather. And not sure it's going to happen. Not sure it's not going to happen. There's, like I said, there's some prominent Ohio State insiders that think Ohio State's still in this one, and things can change. But I like I said, whoever gets him is getting a great kid and great parents. I believe his dad's a military guy, a military background, and you can tell he's a yes sir, no sir type of kid, and would be a great addition to the Buckeyes if they got him.
Yeah, I love that. It's hilarious when you're watching these teams, and it's like, why on earth would you ever throw it at him? Ever? It's like you have this whole field, and this receiver, he's not even running a route, and then you kind of overthrow a kid, underthrow a kid, and then it's like you throw it to the best player on the field, and sometimes the QB decision making is somewhat questionable. In your experience, because you've been doing this for a long time, how often have you seen people put a quote unquote crystal ball selection out, and you knew it was either incorrect or it was likely to change or it was like a low probability? How many times have you seen that? And what were some of the notable ones? Like Dontre Wilson was a real notable one, Taylor Decker. But in your career, what were some flips that you're like, yeah, I think we still have a really good chance at getting that kid?
Well, again, you see crystal ball. You have to understand what the crystal ball game is. There's literally about 2 or 3 people that really have some inside information that everybody else just kind of tails them in terms of the crystal
Yes.
balls. And so hell, you can go back to Von Bell and some of the great crystal ball times of like I said, I don't put a lot of stock in that. We have our own sources on on these recruits, have a pretty good handle on what's going on. Right now, like I said, I'd watch the guys that are doing the edits, because the guys that are doing the edits, the guys like the Hayes Fawcett's, those are the guys that are getting the information right now about
Yep.
where the kids are going, because the kids are telling them, hey, put me in an Ohio State Buckeye thing with angel wings on it or something like that. And so they know, and that's,
Yeah.
that's where you want that information right now. That's where that's at. But with kids, it changes so quickly. But I wouldn't get too rung up about a number of crystal balls going, because I think that's just people tailing the people in the know. And I think with AJ Harris, there's still a lot to be said in this recruitment.
Yeah, I agree. Because when you take a fire hose to your staff, and you've got to bring in 2 new secondary coaches who they weren't at competing schools. They didn't really have any relationship with AJ, because you bring in someone from the Jacksonville Jaguars and someone from Cincinnati Bearcats, like they've never called this kid before. It's not like if you hire Corey Raymond, who's at LSU recruiting him, then he goes to Florida and he's still recruiting him. So they're making up some ground there. I'm sure it's going to be tough, and I'm sure that he's a little jaded that Coach Combs is gone, because that was his guy. So it's going to be interesting to see these guys do some work. Now it's now they're here. They've got the Blocko on their sweatshirt, and it's time to to earn that salary and go get some 5-star corners. So it's gonna be exciting. I love this kid. I hate to see him, kind of potentially drifting away, and I hope our guys can reel him back in and get him in the boat because he's the kind of kid we need because we can't have enough corners in modern college football. Cornerback's probably the hardest position on the field to play, and when you can get a good one, it just changes everything. So. With that, Nevada, any closing remarks on today's show? Today was another great one. Masters, AJ Harris, your boy Baker Mayfield.
Not, just I think for the Buckeyes, I think you know, the first through the first 3 days of practice, you're not seeing a lot in terms of moving up down the depth charts, but you're starting to see little glimpses of what the style is going to be, and you keep hearing about Jim Knowles, the teacher, and I think one of the things that's really interesting is how they've kind of for years and years and years at Ohio State, everything's been about best versus best, kind of a competition, and here you start hearing more and more about how the emphasis is on teaching, not winning every rep, not winning every drill, not winning everything, and that's a change. Now,
Mm-hmm.
is that a good change? I don't know. It's a change, and Ohio State's always prided. So with Urban Meyer, you lived it. With Urban Meyer, everything was a competition.
Win or loser
Everything from
day.
every
Yep.
yeah. That's just the way it was. It didn't matter what the drill was, or we talked about mat drills being winner or loser. Um, and now it's a little bit more nurturing. It's a little bit more teaching. It's a little bit more of a different approach, and we'll see how that shows itself in terms of results in the field. But I think that's certainly a profound change for Ohio State football, and what I'm excited to see.
Yeah, and sometimes if a guy is good at it and he can get it out of the players and he can coach up the players and he can get them to do what he needs them to do, it doesn't have to be like full metal jacket every minute of every day because the kids will play hard for him because they understand that he really is trying to teach them how to do things. Like when I coached, there's certain kids that you have to yell at and prod and try to get them to wake up out of their funk and show up to practice and work. And then there's some kids like Pat Elflein, Jack Mehort, they just want to know what to do. And if you can explain it to them clearly, then they'll dive off a building for you, and you just don't have to be you don't have to be screaming and yelling at some of these kids that are super high achievers. But there's some kids that they don't want to be high achievers. They don't know what it means to be a high achiever, and you got to wake them up and motivate them to do better. So, with that, we're gonna wrap this one up. Appreciate you guys as always. This has been another fantastic show. Thank you, Nevadabuck. And we're in the middle of spring ball. It's time to join BuckeyeScoop.com. We are on fire. We're going to have multiple scrimmage reports in the coming weekends. We're going to be really excited about that. We have great intel for practice. We've been just on fire. Great recruiting information, great coverage, an excellent community, and just real excited about all this. So I hope you guys join BuckeyeScoop.com. I'm about to go jump on the boards myself. Can't wait to do it. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Again, leave your comments on who you think needs to step up in spring practice. Maybe what coach you're most excited to see. Is it Jim Knowles' defense? Is Justin Fry's offensive line? Leave me some comments. Leave me some feedback. I appreciate everything you guys write. Subscribe to the channel, likes, forward the video to your buddies, your friends, family. We appreciate all the support. We're growing like crazy because of you guys. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Go Bucks.